week 11 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I looked at off the wire this week. The first kicker, Will Richard of the Minnesota Vikings. Will Richard, he's been a solid kicker this season. Last year was a good year for him as well. In the games, he didn't miss with injury. And the last few games, 3 out of 4 games, 9 or more fantasy points for Will Richard. Week 7 versus Philly, 18. Week 8 at the Chargers, 6. Week 9 at Detroit, 11. And Week 10 versus Baltimore, 9 fantasy points. So this week, Week 11, Chicago Bears coming in. Another indoor game, which obviously is always a plus, not dealing with the outside elements, especially this time of year where the weather's dropping. And we've even seen some snow a little bit in some of these ball games. So Richard, he's in an offense that stalls out a decent amount this season with J.J. McCarthy now in there quarterback. And I think once again this week, he could go out there and help fantasy owners, and he's out there in 59% of fantasy leagues. Next kicker, Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs. I know it hasn't been a good year for Harrison Butker, but he's out there in 57% of fantasy leagues. He's actually a kicker you could go out there right now on the waiver wire and pick up before the Monday night game here tonight is Harrison Butker. And like I said, anytime a kicker's in a high-powered offense, you still go out there and take a chance to put him on your roster. So Butker, he got dropped in tons of leagues with the bye week and underperforming, but like I said, he's in a high-powered offense, and some weeks he'll still have big weeks. So Week 7 versus Vegas, 7. Week 8 versus Washington, 4. Week 9 at Buffalo, 8 fantasy points. So Week 11, a good matchup on paper at Denver, a bend but don't break defense, one of the better defenses in the league. And they give up the 4th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So with a good matchup coming up, and also as well, like I said, he's on a high-powered offense where chances will be there, hopefully more than extra points. I think Butker's worth an ad, and he's out there in 57% of fantasy week. Next kicker, Cairo Santos of the Chicago Bears. Cairo Santos, it's been a solid season for him, and he's in one of the better offenses of the year. I know Week 10 wasn't a great game, only 6 fantasy points. Whatever the opportunities he got, he hit his field goal, and his 3 extra points in that game. So the last few weeks here for Santos, Week 8 at Baltimore, 11. Week 9 at Cincinnati, 11. And Week 10 versus the Giants, 6 fantasy points. So Week 11, an indoor game at the Minnesota Vikings. We know their defense is a bend but don't break unit. And Cairo Santos, he's been one of the more accurate kickers over the last 5 seasons, is Santos. So right now with this Bear team playing good, putting up points, and Santos, he's been an accurate kicker over the last couple seasons. Definitely a kicker to go out there and add, and he's out there in 71% of fantasy leagues. Next kicker, Cam Little of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cam Little, it's been an okay season for him, but now the last 2 weeks he's gone out there and put up some big games. So Week 7 versus the Rams, 1. Week 8 had to bye. Week 9 at Vegas, 15. And Week 10 at Houston, 13 fantasy points. And Cam Little set the NFL record in Week 9 at Vegas with a 68-yarder. And then Week 10 at Houston, and that one he hit a 53-yarder, a couple 30-plus yarders, and 2 extra points. So this offense, they're playing decent football as Jacksonville, but they're an offense as well that stalls out. And like I said, Cam Little, he's got him or Brandon Aubrey, the 2 best long-distance kickers in the league, in my opinion. But the thing is, his accuracy's been a problem this season for Little. But the last 2 weeks, he's gone out there and he's putting up big numbers. So this week with a good matchup coming up versus the Chargers, they give up the 16th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. I think Little's worth an ad, and he's out there in 80% of fantasy leagues. And the final kicker, Nick Folk of the New York Jets. And Nick Folk, it's been a solid season for the 17-year vet and 40-year-old kicker is Nick Folk, out there in 97% of fantasy leagues, and the last 3 out of 4 weeks, 9 or more fantasy points for Nick Folk. So he's on an offense that don't score a lot of touchdowns this season, where they've been settling for field goals. And Nick Folk, pretty much, he's been money in the bank anytime they call his number to kick the football. Week 12, Week 7 versus Carolina, 7. Week 8 at Cincinnati, 12. And Week 10 versus Cleveland, 9 fantasy points. So this week, they know they got to put points on the board. They're going to New England on Thursday Night Football is this New York Jet team. But this New England defense is a bend but don't break units. I think fantasy points could be there for Nick Folk. And like I said, it seems like weekly 9 or more fantasy points. He's getting more weeks than not. So that's a few kickers I looked at off the wire for Week 11 of the fantasy football season.